Okay, Year 10, welcome to a video on your assessment task. I can't be there today, I'm really sorry, but instead I've made this video. I hope that it's useful to you. I'm expecting you guys to work really well on this.
Welcome to slavery.
And I can't wait to see you guys back in class. But let me just go through the assessment task here right now. Firstly, let me tell you that it is the 20th of May. And here is the assessment task. Now, this assessment task can be found on Google Classroom, as well as this video if you haven't already worked that out. All right, so by all means download the document. You should also have received a hard copy of this via your teacher today. All right, 2019, here are the outcomes for geography. So in this task, we're looking to see that you explain the diversity of features and characteristics of a range of places and environments, explaining processes and influences that form and transform places and environments. I won't read through all of these, but you can read through them yourselves. So these are the outcome numbers, and we're looking to assess you on those. All right, so we want you to demonstrate a deep, so not a shallow understanding, a deep understanding. That means that we need to see a wide range of research, and that you've conducted quite a lot of thinking about that research and what it's telling us in terms of human well-being. We are looking to identify differences in human well-being between places. So, for example, looking at how human well-being in Australia versus human well-being in another country. So just bear that in mind while you're working through this assessment task. Now, the due date is Monday of week 7. Okay, now it's at midday, 12 p.m.
You're kidding, aren't you?
So obviously we won't have class at that time. So it's week 7 at 12 p.m. If it's electronic submission via Google Classrooms, and that is the only way you will submit this.
You're kidding, aren't you?
Okay. If it's not electronic, it needs to be before this time in hand. So you could hand it in Monday morning, you could hand it in the Friday before, it's up to you. But just please note that this is absolutely the deadline, okay? So I want you to work really well between here now and then, so that you guys put yourself in a great position to do well.
Do we have to?
Which is, of course, what we want. Okay, so the essential question, the thing I think we're trying to really establish is, what are the human well-being issues and how can they be addressed? So how are they being addressed and how can they be addressed? Okay, so here's the task. So you are to research one, okay, only one, contemporary human well-being issue. Contemporary meaning a modern issue. So we don't take a historical perspective on this. We're taking a contemporary, modern, geographical perspective on issues relating to human well-being. All right? You're going to present your findings in a visual presentation, something that we can garner your knowledge from by looking at some visuals. And we've put here a list of formats that we are happy for you to use. Okay, so this includes PictoChart. Some of you would have might remember using this last year. You could make an iMovie, which is kind of what I've done here as a demonstration. You could make a PowerPoint. Now here I would actually suggest that you use Google Slides because it's collaborative, because it's you don't have to save your work, you can't lose it. If you lose your iPad, you will still have access to it, okay? Whereas if you use PowerPoint or Keynote and you lose your device, the whole lot's gone. So you don't want that to happen. as you will have put a lot of work into it, so use Google Slides. You can use an interactive multimodal text, which just means a variety of, these on the list. So think about that. You can write a persuasive speech. Now, we've already done this, so personally I'd prefer you didn't, but if you really want to, that's fine. So think about what you did last time if you're going to write a persuasive speech. Look at the feedback that I gave you on that speech and improve it, all right? You could construct a poster, okay? That is an option. A poster would be a combination of geographic tools like graphs, maps, pictures, all pictures labelled, all pictures with their sources there. And when you have text on the poster, you refer to your sources by saying or writing things like occurred according to the United Nations, okay? So acknowledge your sources. Now it says here, or other method approved by your teacher. So as I'm not there, it's going to be hard for you to get that approval. So I think at the moment, we should stick with these options here. Okay. One other one that's not here I would probably accept might be something like a Prezi, something that presents in an informative and creative way. All right? Okay. As an individual or pair, so you can work in a pair, not more than a pair. So don't ask me if you can work in a three. You can't work in a three. Okay? Individually or pair. If you're going to do a pair, think about who you're working with. If you want to put in a lot of effort and you pair up with someone who doesn't, then you're going to get frustrated. So think about who that pair might be and make sure you're both on the same page. Now, of course, I want every single student to put in their best effort, so this shouldn't be a problem. You will be researching, in other words, finding out about, and you will be presenting, okay, on one of the following issues. So food security is one. Okay, so you might look, for example, at what are the issues in the future that will impact on people's human well-being in accessing food, whether it's within their country or whether it's having to import food, etc. You might look, for example, at disease. Okay, any of these are some examples, or another chosen disease. You'll need to clear that with me when I return. All right, water and sanitation, so particularly access to water and the implications of that access, whether it's high access or low access, and of course sanitation, meaning keeping ourselves clean, healthy and tidy. So it might have to do with toilets, ability to brush teeth, those sort of things, washing your hands after you go to the toilet, showering, bathing, okay, that's sanitation. Access to water. You might look at the impact of things like drought or the impact of living in semi-arid areas and so forth. Another one here is human rights. By all means have a look at that. There are a lot of violations of human rights in a contemporary manner. Just take a look, for example, at places like the Middle East, okay, or even China. Child soldiers, okay. This seems to be a bit of a theme through northeastern parts of Africa and of course some other parts of the world. You may look at poverty, you may look at child labour, human trafficking. Okay. Now it says see your teacher first. The reason why we've got that there is because when you're researching human trafficking, sometimes you can come across some graphic images, and if that sort of thing puts you off, we would recommend you don't choose this one. Okay, you might look at civil war or conflict of some kind. So you may look at what's going on in Israel, Iraq, Iran. You may look at Sudan, another place where we have threats of civil war or recent civil war. And by recent, I mean within the last 10 years would be appropriate. And or you could do impacts of natural disasters like tsunamis and how that impacts on human well-being. Once again here, you won't be able to get something approved by me. However, if your teacher today is a geography teacher, then I would be happy for them to decide whether or not your chosen topic would fit into this task, okay? Okay, so now we look at what you have to do. So our format, our aim. And our aim is one sentence, okay? And it will include some of the following, or one of the following options. You may investigate, you may analyse, you may outline, you may describe, you may assess, okay? So you might assess the impacts on people from the practice of child soldiers. Simple aim, it's short, it's one sentence, okay? So your aim needs to be one sentence and one sentence only.
You're kidding, aren't you?
Alright, not a paragraph. That is not an aim. Alrighty. Once you've decided on what your topic is and your aim, we need to then provide some background information. Okay, this is where the research comes in. We're looking for background info on the factors that contribute to the problem and what indicators out there contribute to the problem. So, for example, if you were doing access to water, I would like to see you focus on indicators that reflect what the access of water is like. And you'll find information on that on the internet, in atlases, and so forth. Okay. You could, for example, look at past rainfall. You could look at the climate. These would all tell you about access to water. So think about what sort of indicators are out there that will give us some information that will allow us to understand the background of our issue. Okay? All right. Remember, of course, that we always have to get back to human well-being. All right? How well people are going. So please remember that. All right. Number 3, impacts on people's human well-being because of the issue. So, this is like the background and the cause, and so forth. And so as a result of that, what are the impacts? We might be looking at, for example, health. What are the impacts on health? What are the impacts on people's level of education? Or what are the impacts on people's self-worth? Okay, so look at those sort of things. What are the impacts on one's ability to provide for themselves? Okay, perhaps if you're looking at human rights, what's different between men and women, and how might women be impacted separately to men in terms of their human well-being? Okay, Saudi Arabia has some very, very interesting human rights issues going on right now between men and women, and what men can do versus what women can do. So you might also outline, well, what's the current situation? What's the current trend? Okay, here's where you can focus in on either a specific country, or you could address issues across the globe. Okay, and given the current situation, well, what are the future challenges in order to, for example, improve human rights? Okay, so it might be forms of government. A form of government can impact on a country's ability to achieve better human rights. Okay, it could be if you find anything on, for example, any kind of money laundering. If money is not being spent in proper ways, that's going to impact on human rights. Okay, or it might impact on poverty, or it might impact on access to water and sanitation. And same with civil wars. That can impact on access to some of these other issues. All right. So that's what we need to see in part 4 here. Part 5, responses at varying scales by government. Okay, so how does the government respond to these issues? What programs do they put in place? What policies do they have to avoid issues related to human rights? Okay, what is their perspective on dealing with child soldiers or the people who train them? Okay, what sort of punishments do we have for people who traffic humans? Are there any? Who's responsible to police it? Okay, it's going to be the government, but which part of the government? Okay, and how well are they doing at managing these issues? We may also look at non-government organisations, NGOs. Okay, for example, what does Caritas Australia do to improve water and sanitation? Okay, what's the United Nations doing to deal with human rights. Okay. We can also put here, sorry, just going back to governments here, how are other governments in the world responding to what's happening in Saudi Arabia? What's their response? Look at their press releases and see what they're saying about these issues. Okay. If you are on Twitter, consider following some of the organisations mentioned here, like the UN, or go to their YouTube page, okay, and see what videos they're making about some of these issues. You could even put into YouTube, just put a simple search in human rights, see what comes up, and see if you can identify who made the video. Look at the channel, okay? Visit the channel, see what other videos they've made, see if their reputation is of high quality, or whether it's just Joe Blow in the backyard making some video about the issue, or if it's some other student, for example, at another school who's made a YouTube clip about child soldiers. So be discerning, be critical, and consider who's responding and how. Okay? We also want you to put into place some kind of plan of action.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
This should be something that isn't happening, that you think should be happening. Okay? You might focus on developing better technologies, or you might focus on providing more funding for research to deal with things like water and sanitation. Okay? If it's something like human rights, okay, it might be some strategy that you believe would work in ensuring that all people have human rights. Okay? If you're doing child soldiers, it'd be worth investigating Joseph Kony. There's a video on YouTube all about him. It goes for 28 minutes, I think, so that would be a starting point if you're doing child soldiers and so forth. All right, so propose your own course of action. All right, give it some thought, reflect, put your proposal to somebody else and get some feedback on it. Ask them, what's the weakness with this idea of mine? Do you like the idea? What's wrong with it? Get some feedback before you actually propose, so that if there are any challenges on your idea, you can reevaluate and rethink and put together a plan that looks solid, okay, to improve human well-being. Okay, you will need a reference list.
You're kidding, aren't you?
Are you kidding?
Okay. Now you'll notice here it says in text. We've spoken about this before. In text means that we are referencing within our typed words, okay, according to the United Nations. All right. In an article written by The Guardian, it states, okay, or which states. All right. Maybe propose the title of the article, but that's what we mean by in text. So you're referring to your sources in your writing. It will also need to be in a list at the end. Okay. Generally speaking, this should be in the order in which you used the source in your work. So, for example, one of your first sources will probably fit into this background part. So if you used a source that told you about the background issues, then that's what appears first on your reference list. And of course, remember, please, that when we are writing our bibliography, we do it correctly, okay? This generally means, if it's a website or a YouTube clip, that we put in the URL, of course, but before that, we put in the publisher, the organisation. So if it's YouTube, it's going to be YouTube, followed by the title, and you should also add in the channel name, and then finally the URL appears. You should also have the date you accessed the source, okay? So keep a record as you go of your sources. A really quick copy the URL, stick it into a document, and put the date at the end of it will do the job, okay? So consider doing that. So that's your task format. To be successful, okay, you'll bring together geographical information from a variety of sources, okay? You're probably looking at 20 to 30 different websites that you should be visiting at minimum, right? That's a variety. 3 is not variety, 5 is not variety, 20 to 30, because you will want to have read widely on your issue. You cannot propose a plan if you don't know about the topic. Alright? So read widely. Communicate your understanding of the issue. This is your literacy. Okay? Use TEAL where possible. And strategies to address. So how accurate are your strategies? Alright? Your research will determine how accurate your strategies are. Okay? And that will be obvious when I read your work. Okay? Don't forget your graphic forms. This is your maps, graphs, pictures. This includes flowcharts and so forth. So please get onto that. Get that right. How well you propose actions. Was it well thought out? Is it detailed? Have you thought critically about what's wrong with your plan and addressed it? Alright, so give that a lot of thought. Again, the wider you read, the more obvious it should become as to what needs to happen. Okay, it might be that government needs to do something. It might be that individuals need to, write to their constituents, asking them to deal with a particular issue, and so forth. Source all of your material, of course. If you provide a picture, I want it labelled, and I want the source of where the picture came from.
Are you kidding? Never!
Okay. Also, if you do a picture, put a border around it. Okay, through the formatting of the picture. All right. If you don't know how to do that, I can show you. Okay. There'll be a number of checkpoints where you'll be given a grade before the due date. So I'll be coming around and looking at your work and checking, and I'll record down how you're going. All right. And I'm going to use that to help me formulate an overall mark. All right. Keep you on the right track. Keep us all on the right track, and all will be good. Okay. So the task should be submitted electronically. So if you're doing Google Slides, well then, it's hard to print out slides. So you just simply submit that through Google Classroom. Right? Electronically. I don't accept emails. I don't accept thumb drives. And I don't accept any other form of submission other than putting it into Google Classroom. Alright, so if you do this, I'm going to reject it, and you'll have to do it the proper way. So do it the proper way first, and then you won't have a problem. If it's a poster, no problem, hand it in by the due date, okay, before the due date. Alright. Okay, so that's submission of the task. Now, I want you to recall back to our last assessment task in geography, and for many of you we sat down and we looked at this marking criteria, and I want most of you being up here. So this one here is the outcomes. Alright, this is your A grade, this is your E grade down this end. So I'm looking to see that you have a wide range of accurate and appropriate sources to graphically display levels of well-being. So firstly, while you're here, highlight these.
Do it. Do it.
Alright.
Okay, understand? Good. Alright. I want to see extensive evidence and synthesis, meaning the organisation of your geographical information. Use subheadings. Okay, break it up. For example, you might want to turn some of these into subheadings. Okay, keep it simple. Alright. Okay, so yes, we want to see extensive evidence of organisation of your information, your geographic information. We want to see that variety of 20 to 30 sources minimum. We want a wide range of accurate and appropriate sources. There's that sources again. You can see how important it is. It pops up. Sources. Okay. So don't forget that reference list to explain reasons for your human wellbeing levels in chosen country region. Alright, so just put that together, and that basically means that we're looking to see that you've addressed the issues for developing countries and human wellbeing, no matter the place, because the reasons for and consequences of the issues occurring in those places in the world. Alright. Okay, and of course this one here. This is where you are looking at how the government's responding and how non-government agencies are responding. Okay, so there are plenty of examples of where that's happening in the world. It's more than likely that I will provide feedback in the same way I did last time, which means I'll highlight the where you got the marks. I'll give the overall grade here, and then I'll probably delete this and put your comment at the bottom here. Okay, and I think that, oh no, one more thing. This is a little check sheet. This is to help keep you on track. And perhaps when I check in with you, I'll look to see where you're up to with this. Okay, so writing your topic down. What sort of regions are you looking at where this is a problem, this topic? And of course, what format it is. Is it going to be Google Slides? Is it going to be iMovie, etc.? Use this checklist, okay? Don't ignore it. Have you included a suitable aim of investigation? Yes, I have. Give it a tick, all right? Work your way through these. Okay, this is designed to try and make the job a little bit more organised for you, okay? And that finishes us off. Look, I've had fun doing this. By all means, give it a beautiful like, and of course, share it far and wide. Thank you for listening.